that the world has shown in South Africa by electing it to serve on the UN Security Council for a non-permanent 2-year term. He spoke to SABC News in an exclusive interview last night after the announcement.
Well, we're very pleased with the success of our bid, because we join a group of nations that will be sitting in the Security Council. We're delighted that many nations, 183 nations around the world, have invested their confidence in us to sit in the United Nations. And I think this is a recognition of the ability of South Africa to be able to represent the views of many African nations, and also to represent a progressive line of thought, and also to participate in the multilateral organization like the United Nations. So we are humbled by the confidence that's been placed in us, and we will make sure that we execute the responsibility that has been placed on our shoulders with great diligence and dignity and responsibility in handling the affairs of the world.
Well, we're very busy today, and we're very pleased to be joined in studio by the chairperson of the subcommittee on international relations, Lindiwe Zulu. A very good afternoon to you, Ma. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you for the invitation.
Look, let's ride on the back of what the president was saying. He says, of course, that the UN seat opens a whole lot of doors. But what I want to draw into this is of course, the fact that he says he wants to engage on the Constitution after he comes back from the Group of 7 summit, particularly around these issues. Let's have your say.
Well, firstly, we are humbled, as everyone has been saying, by this election, and it's the third time around that we are now elected into the non-permanent seat. I think what it says to the wild world is that people have got confidence in South Africa, because you wouldn't be elected into a prestigious position like that, even though it's non-permanent member, but all the same, it comes with a lot of responsibility, and it means that the world still does believe that South Africa has got the capacity to assist in global issues. This is about peace, security and stability of the entire world, not just the African continent. So it means whatever contribution we've made in the past, they feel that we can still make even more contribution at the moment.
Look, Mazulu, it seems like South Africa is going to be essentially representing the African continent. What are some of the issues that you'd like to see them actually move through, particularly, like you've just mentioned now, the issues of security, but what are some of the issues that you'd like to see highlighted when it comes to South African challenges?
I think we should firstly thank the African continent, because we were supported firstly by SADC, then we were supported by the AU itself, all the countries, because they know that South Africa has contributed greatly to issues of peace, security and stability. We even have our own troops just right here next door in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And by the way, when it comes to peace issues in the entire continent, right from 1994, we have been involved in assisting those countries to bring peace in their countries. And also the African continent, through its Agenda 2063, it is very clear that it wants to silence all guns, because once guns have been silenced, once there are no wars, then Africa can focus on the development, but Africa can also focus on ensuring that it has governments in place that respond to the needs of its own people. That means all the people of Africa. And I think that South Africa is held up high in terms of having its own constitution. That is an example to the entire continent. South Africa is also held up high in terms of its own governance, institutions of governance. South Africa is held up very high in that we're only 24 years in government, and yet we have institutions of governance which are an institutional recourse for ordinary people. Issues of human rights are going to be at the center of all this. Issues of peace, stability and security in the entire continent. So where there are still troubles in the continent, again, I'll go back to the DRC, because that's where we see a lot of conflict still going on. Recently there was Ebola, and it's easier to deal with such challenges of any health issue if there's peace in the country, if there's development in the country. But if there's no peace it becomes very difficult for the world.
To the layman, I mean, a lot of people are saying now that South Africa is in this important organ of the UN. Let's bring it back to your constituency now, the party, the ANC. A lot of people are saying, should South Africa's priorities now be in line with the ANC's conference resolutions?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, what is happening now is also part of the resolution of the 54th conference. In fact, it's not there, even with the policy conference, that resolution that said we must strive to get this seat. We must crisscross the entire continent to make sure that we get the seat. But we also looked for support, because you don't want to get this seat and you don't have the capacity to deliver. It means we have been able to deliver in as far as the responsibility in the United Nations, and also the transformation of the entire United Nations. And all multilateral organizations are at the center of what we need to do, because we need to make sure that when people say Africa is the next best thing, we need to answer the question, next best thing for who? And we're now saying Africa must be the next best thing for Africans, but Africans first must recognize the importance of Africa as a continent. It is for that purpose that we will continue as the African National Congress to contribute towards the growth of Africa, both economic, towards stability, social, because people would never be able to take care of themselves if there is no peace in the continent.
And speaking of stability, Minister, before I let you go, now on another matter, the issue with the PEC in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's have your comment there, because there's been questions about why can't the ruling party have a neutral structure that is there to deal with the grievances of the members, so that it doesn't cost you when it comes to conferences like this?
Well, this is a constitutional structure. By the way, let us remember that the ANC itself has its own constitution, and we respect that constitution. So the issue of conflict resolution within the ANC itself, its lessons from how we managed to do it outside somewhere else, it's lessons for us. But my view is that 24 years of building democracy is never enough for helping people with a mindset that says, if there are rules, let's stick to the rules. And those rules must be for everybody. It's unfortunate that the conference did not take place, but I was watching the chairperson and everyone who's deployed there to make sure that the conference does take place. We need to make sure that internally we are able to resolve our conflict as the ANC. We can't give it to somebody else. We've got to be able to do it ourselves.
All right, Mazulu, I have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That is Lindiwe Zulu, coming to talk to us in her capacity as the chairperson of the Committee of Relations and Cooperation, about our momentous being chosen into being one of the non-permanent members in the UN Security Council. And staying with ANC matters, the ANC's conference in KwaZulu-Natal has finally been called off. The party had decided to hold a consultative conference after a group of disgruntled members won a court interdict to block the planned elective conference at Impangeni in the province's north coast. However, chaos erupted there last night when some delegates rejected that decision and